Today, we are tackling, well, perhaps the biggest question: consciousness, and specifically the hard problem.
Right. It's not just about how the brain works like a computer, processing information.
No, it's about the feeling itself. Why does it feel like something to be you? Why do we have this subjective experience, what philosophers call qualia, that sensation of, I don't know, tasting chocolate or seeing red?
Exactly. And the standard view in neuroscience for a long time has been pretty reductive. Consciousness is just what the brain does, an after effect maybe, confined entirely to our nervous system.
But the sources we've gathered for this deep dive, they really push back on that. Hard.
They do. We're looking at some pretty radical ideas today, from quantum physics, non-local models of reality, even neuroscience findings that challenge the idea of a single unified self.
So our mission here is to explore these challenging perspectives. We're essentially asking, is your consciousness locked inside your head? Is it just local?
Or is it something bigger, maybe universal, fundamental, woven into reality itself? It's a huge question.
It really is. If consciousness isn't just biology, it changes, well, everything.
So where do we start? Let's go small, really small, down to the quantum level, deep inside your brain's neurons.
Okay, quantum consciousness. This often starts with the idea that our minds can do things classical computers just can't, like genuine understanding.
That's a key argument, yeah. Sir Roger Penrose, the Nobel laureate, he really championed this. He used Gödel's incompleteness theorems to argue that human mathematicians can grasp truths that are formally unprovable within a given system, something a purely algorithmic computer couldn't do.
Meaning, our current physics, the classical stuff we use to describe brain signals, must be missing something.
Precisely. If the mind is non-computable in that sense, then we need a new kind of physics to explain it, a quantum physics of the mind.
Which led him to team up with Stuart Hameroff, an anesthesiologist, oddly enough.
Well, Hameroff was interested in how anesthesia works, how it switches off consciousness. It led them to propose the orchestrated objective reduction model, or R?
ORCH or R.
Okay, so if consciousness isn't just neurons firing, where did they propose it happens?
Inside the neurons, but deeper. In the microtubules, these tiny protein tubes form the neuron's internal skeleton.
I thought those were just scaffolding.
That's the traditional view. But ORCH-R suggests they're much more. They have this complex lattice structure. And the idea is they function as biological quantum processors. Quantum computations are supposedly happening inside these microtubules.
Wow. Okay, so the quantum magic isn't floating around vaguely. It's happening in specific biological structures. What about the OR part? Objective reduction.
Right, that's the mechanism for how a conscious moment actually arises. In quantum mechanics, you have superposition, a system existing in multiple states at once.
Like Schrodinger's cat being alive and dead.
Kind of, but in OR, this superposition within the microtubules can't last forever. It collapses into a definite state. And this collapse isn't caused by someone looking at it, like in some interpretations.
No observer needed. No, it's an objective reduction. The model proposes it happens due to a specific quantum gravity process. Basically, the superposition involves tiny displacements of mass, like parts of the tubulin proteins being slightly separated from themselves.
Okay.
This separation creates a tiny gravitational self-energy and instability in space-time geometry itself. When this self-energy reaches a certain threshold, collapse.
And that collapse is the moment of conscious experience? Or choice?
That's the proposal. A moment of proto-consciousness linked to the fundamental structure of space-time through quantum gravity. It's orchestrated by the biology, hence orchestrated objective reduction.
So consciousness isn't just biological, it's cosmological almost, linked to the fabric of reality.
That's the implication.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect bridge to our next set of idea theories that suggest consciousness isn't even in the brain at all. It's non-local.
Right, let's zoom out. What if the brain is more like a receiver or an antenna?
Exactly. This brings us to models like the quantum hologram, or QH, proposed by folks like Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, and Robert Starrett.
A quantum hologram. What does that mean?
They propose it's a fundamental information field in nature. Think of information being as fundamental as matter and energy. This QH is seen as the basis for consciousness, an interconnected, self-organizing system spanning potentially the entire universe.
So like a cosmic cloud storage for consciousness.
That's one way to think about it. It operates using quantum principles we know, like entanglement particles staying connected no matter the distance and non-locality.
And the hologram part.
That's key. Like a regular hologram, any small piece of the QH record is thought to contain the whole picture. Just maybe fuzzier, less detailed. Every part reflects the whole.
Okay, if this information field is everywhere, how do I access it? How does my individual consciousness tap into this universal field?
The proposed mechanism is resonance, like tuning a radio to a specific station. Your brain perhaps resonates with specific information patterns within this field.
Is there any evidence for this beyond, feeling connected?
Well, the sources point to a couple of areas. Anecdotally, you get these striking cases of twin telepathy, like the story of American twins, separated at birth, raised apart, who somehow both ended up using the exact same, quite rare brand of Swedish toothpaste without any contact.
That's weirdly specific. But anecdotes are tricky, scientifically speaking.
They are, but then you look at the quantitative stuff. Meta-analyses of studies where people try to influence random number generators, RNGs, purely with their intention.
Like trying to make the random numbers less random?
Essentially, yes. And the results, when compiled across many experiments and labs, are statistically significant. Extremely so. One calculation put the odds against these results happening by chance at 35 trillion to 1.
35 trillion to 1. Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
that's hard to ignore. It suggests intention isn't just in our heads.
It suggests intention, belief, consciousness itself might have a direct, non-local effect on the physical world.
Right.
That we are, in some way, constantly interacting with this wider field.
This links nicely to another really wild idea, connecting consciousness to the flow of time itself, the concept of syntropy.
Ah, yes. This goes deep into the mathematics of quantum physics. Wave equations, like the Klein-Gordon or Dirac equations, naturally yield two solutions concerning time.
Two solutions.
Yes. One describes retarded waves moving forward in time. These are linked to entropy, the tendency towards disorder, divergence, things falling apart. That's the usual arrow of time we experience.
The universe running down.
Right. But there's a symmetrical solution, advanced waves. These mathematically move backward in time, and they are associated with syntropy convergence, increasing complexity, order, growth.
Whoa, backward time waves. What does that have to do with consciousness?
The theory posits that life and consciousness are phenomena fundamentally linked to these advanced syntropic waves. They represent the universe's tendency to build complexity, to organize, to converge.
So life isn't just fighting entropy, it's riding a wave of syntropy coming from the future, in a sense.
That's the provocative idea. The very feeling of life, subjective awareness, is described as a consequence of the converging, information-absorbing nature of these advanced waves.
And the implication for AI?
Massive. If this model is right, machines, being based on classical physics and entropy-driven processes, retarded waves, could never truly possess the feeling of life, no matter how complex they become. They lack the fundamental syntropic component.
A fundamental difference between silicon logic and living awareness. Okay, let's bring it back to the brain itself. Even if consciousness is in the brain, is it really one unified me?
Neuroscience throws up some fascinating, sometimes disturbing, evidence that suggests you might be more of a committee than a CEO. Consciousness seems fragmented, distributed across different brain regions.
Like alien hand syndrome, that sounds like something out of a movie.
It's real. Damage to certain areas, like the medial frontal lobes, can cause one hand to act with its own apparent intention, buttoning a shirt, grabbing objects, while the person's main conscious self is horrified, has no control, and doesn't know why the hand is doing it.
So a separate will operating in the same body.
It appears that way. We also see this fragmentation in cases of frontal lobe injury, where intelligence, say high IQ, remains intact, but the person loses all willpower or ability to direct that intelligence. They might become completely apathetic or dangerously disinhibited. The knowing part is there, but the doing or controlling conscious faculty is gone.
And the most famous examples are split brain patients, right? Where the connection between the two hemispheres is cut.
Exactly. Cutting the corpus callosum can lead to two seemingly independent streams of awareness in one head. You get reports of bizarre conflicts, one hand buttoning up a shirt while the other unbuttons it, one hand trying to turn the TV channel while the other fights it.
I remember reading about a patient where one half of the brain seemingly wanted to visit the ex-wife, while the other half, connected to speech, was protesting, a literal internal battle.
It really challenges our intuitive sense of being a single, unified self. Maybe that feeling is just a useful illusion, a story the verbal part of the brain tells itself.
Okay, so we have a potentially fragmented consciousness. How did this strange, complex mind even evolve? The sources suggest it wasn't gradual.
No, it looks more like a big bang of consciousness, relatively late in hominid evolution. If you look at Neanderthals, they clearly had some inner life. They buried their dead, used ochre, maybe even placed flowers in graves. Suggests spiritual capacity, likely mediated by older brain structures like the limbic system.
But they're tools, they're symbolic life.
Seem much simpler, less dynamic than what came next. Then, around maybe 40, 50,000 years ago with Cro-Magnons, anatomically modern humans, something explodes.
The symbolic explosion.
Exactly. This seems tightly linked to the major expansion and reorganization of the frontal lobes.
Yeah.
Suddenly you see sophisticated cave art like a Chauvet, intricate figurines, notation systems possibly tracking lunar cycles, complex burials, evidence of free will in terms of planning and innovation.
So this uniquely human way of thinking, abstract symbols, complex future planning, recursive, thought it was a late addition, an emergent property.
It looks that way. A relatively sudden upgrade that transformed our entire way of being.
Which brings us to a really out there evolutionary idea. Consciousness itself as a fundamental force of nature.
Yes, the idea of consciousness, or perhaps its effective dimension as the fifth influence, alongside gravity, electromagnetism, and the nuclear forces.
What makes feeling affect worthy of that status?
It comes down to motivation, the driver of action. Experiments across species, from rats choosing levers to humans making complex decisions, suggest a common principle. Organisms act to maximize the algebraic sum of anticipated pleasures and minimize displeasures.
So pleasure is like the universal currency, the motivator for everything.
That's the argument. This capacity to feel, to strive towards pleasure and away from pain, isn't just a biological quirk. It's proposed as a fundamental non-dimensional force that actually does things in the universe. It actuates matter and energy by driving complexity. It pushes organisms, and maybe the universe itself, towards states of greater organization and integration, counteracting entropy. It's the engine building, what Teilhard de Chardin called the noosphere, the thinking layer of the Earth, a global network of consciousness.
Okay, we've covered a lot. Quantum effects in microtubules, universe-spanning holographic fields, time-reversed waves, fragmented selves, and consciousness as a cosmic force driving towards pleasure. It's a lot to take in and often contradictory.
Absolutely. And the core tension, that hard problem, often boils down to how we see causality. Traditional neuroscience often suggests our conscious awareness comes after the brain initiates an action. We feel like we decide, but the decision was already underway unconsciously. We're just helpless spectators with an illusion of control.
The feeling of deciding is just catching up with the action.
Right. But then you have these non-local findings like the RNG experiments. They suggest the opposite. The observer's intention, their consciousness, does have a causal effect, seemingly outside the normal rules of space and time. Belief influences reality.
So who's driving the bus? Is it unconscious processes or conscious intention?
The sources present conflicting answers, which leads us to a final, mind-bending philosophical perspective. What if consciousness isn't a thing at all, not a substance or a process inside you?
What else could it be?
What if it's a kind of relationship? An external relation, as one source puts it. Subjectivity and objectivity aren't fundamental properties of different stuff, but functional attributes depending on how things relate.
Meaning?
Meaning, as one quote suggests, thoughts in the concrete are made of the same stuff as things are.
Wait, my thoughts and this chair are made of the same fundamental stuff. The distinction just dissolves.
If that's true, then your subjective experience isn't a picture of the world generated inside your head. It is the world, viewed from your particular relational standpoint. The objective reality and your subjective reality are fundamentally intertwined, maybe even identical.
So what does that imply about the nature of the reality you are experiencing right now listening to this? That's definitely something to ponder.